The conference room felt too small even though it could seat 20 people, and Elena Garcia knew exactly why the moment she spotted him through the glass walls. She'd heard the rumors about Lawrence Jensen, the youngest CEO to ever run a major event planning company, but nothing prepared her for the reality of standing in the same pitch meeting as him. He was leaning against the far wall, dark suit perfectly tailored, arms crossed as he listened to the client's assistant explain the timeline. When his eyes met hers through the glass, something flickered in his expression before he looked away. Elena took a breath and pushed through the door. "I'm sorry I'm a few minutes early," she said to Margaret Chen, the head of operations for Luminescence Hotels. "I can wait outside if you need more time." "No, please come in." Margaret gestured to the conference table. "Actually, this works out perfectly. Elena Garcia, meet Lawrence Jensen. You're both here to pitch for the same contract." Elena's stomach dropped. She'd spent 3 weeks preparing her proposal for the Luminescence Hotel's national relaunch event. This contract would put her small boutique firm on the map, give her the financial stability she'd been chasing since starting her business 2 years ago. And now she was competing against Jensen Events, a company worth over $50 million. Lawrence straightened from the wall and extended his hand. "Elena." His grip was firm and warm. "Lawrence." "I should explain," Margaret said, settling into her chair. "Our board is divided. Some want the prestige of an established name. Others want fresh perspective and personal attention. So we decided to hear both pitches today and make our decision by the end of the week." Elena forced a smile. "That sounds fair." It didn't sound fair at all. It sounded like her dream was about to be crushed by a man who probably had a team of 20 people working on his presentation, while she'd been up until 3 in the morning perfecting hers alone in her apartment. Lawrence took a seat on one side of the table, and Elena sat opposite him. The tension was immediate and electric. She could feel him watching her as she pulled out her tablet and notes, and when she glanced up, he didn't look away. "Elena, why don't you go first?" Margaret suggested. She launched into her presentation, trying to ignore Lawrence's presence. She designed a concept around intimate luxury, transforming each of Luminescence's 15 hotels into a unique experience that would draw influencers and media naturally. The events would be smaller, more exclusive, creating buzz through scarcity rather than spectacle. As she spoke, Elena found her confidence. This was what she was good at. This was why she'd left her stable job at a corporate firm to strike out on her own. She understood how to make people feel special, how to create moments that mattered. When she finished, Margaret was nodding. "That's a very interesting approach." "Lawrence," he stood, and Elena hated how commanding he looked just from that simple movement. Lawrence didn't use a tablet or notes. He spoke directly to Margaret, his voice deep and assured. His concept was completely different from hers. He proposed massive launch events at each hotel, coordinated across all locations on the same night, with live streaming between venues and celebrity appearances. It was bold, expensive, and designed to make an enormous splash. It was also brilliant. Elena's chest tightened as she listened. His idea would definitely get attention. It would trend on social media for days. But it lacked the intimacy that made Luminescence special in the first place. At least, that's what she told herself. "Thank you both," Margaret said when Lawrence finished. "These are very different visions, and that's exactly what we hoped for. We'll be in touch by Friday." Elena gathered her materials quickly, eager to escape before her disappointment showed. She was almost to the elevator when she heard footsteps behind her. "That was a good pitch," Lawrence said. She turned. He'd followed her into the hallway, and up close, he was even more intimidating. Tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to see right through her professional mask. But not good enough to beat yours, Elena replied. I didn't say that. He stepped closer. Your concept understood their brand better than mine did. Then why did you pitch something different? Because I'm giving them what they asked for. They want a splash. You're giving them what they need, which is harder to sell. Elena studied him, trying to figure out his angle. Are you trying to psych me out? A small smile crossed his face. No, I'm trying to buy you coffee. What? There's a cafe downstairs. We just spent 45 minutes in the most awkward pitch meeting I've ever experienced. Might as well debrief over caffeine. Every instinct told Elena to say no. He was the competition. He was also probably used to getting everything he wanted, including the attention of every woman in his orbit. But curiosity won out. Fine. 1 coffee. The cafe was busy with the lunch crowd, but they found a small table by the window. Lawrence ordered an Americano. Elena got a latte, and when Lawrence tried to pay for both, she firmly placed her own credit card on the counter. Independent, he observed as they sat down. Broke, she corrected. There's a difference. You started Garcia Events 2 years ago. Before that, you worked at Prestige Planning for 5 years, won 3 industry awards, and left because you wanted creative control. He took a sip of his coffee. Did I miss anything? Elena stared at him. You researched me. Of course I did. You're my competition. I looked you up too, she admitted. Youngest CEO in the industry. Built Jensen Events from the ground up in 6 years, worth over $50 million. Stanford graduate, never married, no kids, workaholic. The articles always include that last part like it's a character flaw, Lawrence said dryly. Isn't it? Says the woman who was probably up all night perfecting her pitch. Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks because he was exactly right. That's different. I'm building something. You've already built it, so I should just stop, rest on what I've accomplished. He leaned forward, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. I'm 31 years old, Elena. I'm not ready to retire. I didn't mean it like that. I know what you meant. Everyone assumes because I have money now, I should slow down. But I started Jensen Events with $800 and a laptop in my studio apartment. Every client, every event, every success matters just as much now as it did then. There was passion in his voice that surprised her. She'd expected arrogance from Lawrence Jensen, maybe some condescension, but this felt real. Why do you want the luminescence contract? She asked. You don't need it. Need and want are different things. He held her gaze. Why do you want it? Because I do need it. This contract would change everything for my company. That's not the only reason. Elena wrapped her hands around her latte cup. He was right, but she didn't owe him the whole truth. I want to prove I made the right choice, leaving Prestige, starting my own firm. Everyone said I was crazy to walk away from that security. Were they right? Ask me after I land a major client. Lawrence's expression softened. You're good at what you do, you'll get there. Just not with this contract. I didn't say that either. He checked his watch and stood. I have a meeting across town. Thank you for the coffee, Elena. She watched him leave, confused by the entire interaction. Lawrence Jensen was not what she'd expected, and that made him even more dangerous. Elena spent the next 3 days in a state of anxious productivity. She took meetings with smaller potential clients, updated her portfolio, and tried not to obsessively check her email for word from Luminescence Hotels. On Thursday afternoon, Margaret's assistant called. Miss Chen would like to meet with you tomorrow morning at 9. Can you make it? Of course, Elena said, her heart racing. Should I prepare anything additional? Just bring yourself. See you tomorrow. Elena hung up and immediately searched her inbox for any similar message to Lawrence. Nothing public, but that didn't mean anything. They'd probably called him separately too. She arrived at Luminescence headquarters 15 minutes early the next morning, wearing her best suit and carrying a leather portfolio that had cost more than she should have spent. When she walked into the reception area, Lawrence was already there. He looked up from his phone, and something in his expression made her pause. "Did they call you too?" she asked. "Yesterday afternoon." They sat in uncomfortable silence until Margaret's assistant collected them. But instead of leading them to the conference room, she took them to Margaret's private office. The woman herself was standing by the window, arms crossed, looking troubled. "Thank you both for coming," Margaret said. "Please sit." Elena's palms were sweating. This didn't feel like a contract announcement. This felt like bad news. "I'll get straight to it," Margaret continued. "Our board met last night and we're deadlocked. Half want Elena's approach, half want Lawrence's, and frankly, both pitches had weaknesses that the board identified." Elena's hope crumbled. They weren't getting the contract, neither of them. "So we have an unusual proposal," Margaret said. "What if you work together?" The words hung in the air. Elena turned to stare at Lawrence, who looked equally stunned. "Together," he repeated. "Combine your visions." Elena's intimate understanding of our brand with Lawrence's scale and production capability. "We'd pay the full contract amount and split it between your companies." Margaret looked between them. Obviously, this would require collaboration and compromise. "But if you can make it work, we're prepared to move forward." Elena's mind was racing. Split the contract meant half the money she'd been counting on. But half was still significant, and having Jensen Events resources behind the project would give her access to vendors and connections she couldn't afford on her own. "Can we have a moment to discuss?" Lawrence asked. Margaret nodded. "Take the conference room. I'll give you 30 minutes. They walked in silence to the same room where they'd first met. Lawrence closed the door and turned to face her. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think it's not what either of us wanted." "No," he agreed, "but it might be better than nothing." Elena paced to the window. "I don't know if I can work with you. Because you don't like me. Because I don't know you," she faced him. "This contract is huge for me, Lawrence. If we screw this up, it doesn't just hurt the project. It destroys my reputation before I've really built it. You think I'd sabotage you? I think we have completely different working styles and visions. Your pitch was about spectacle. Mine was about intimacy. How do we reconcile that?" Lawrence was quiet for a moment, and she could see him thinking through the logistics. "What if we split the hotels? I handle 7, you handle 7. We coordinate on timing and branding but maintain our individual approaches. And the 15th hotel, we collaborate on that one, make it the flagship event that combines both our strengths." It was actually a decent compromise. Elena felt the resistance in her chest start to ease. "What about decision-making? If we disagree on something, we talk it through until we agree. If we absolutely can't find common ground, we bring Margaret in as a tiebreaker." He stepped closer. "Look, I know this isn't ideal. But I respect your work, Elena. I think we could actually create something better together than either of us would alone." She wanted to believe him. More than that, she needed this opportunity. "Okay," she said. "Let's try it." They shook hands, and this time Elena noticed details she'd missed before. The callus on his right index finger from writing. The small scar above his left eyebrow. The way his jaw tensed slightly, like he was nervous too. Margaret was pleased with their decision. They spent the next hour hammering out basic contract terms, and by the time Elena left the building, she was officially in business with Lawrence Jensen. The reality of what she'd agreed to hit her on the drive back to her office. She was going to be working closely with a man who unsettled her in ways she didn't want to examine. A man who was brilliant and driven and far too attractive for her peace of mind, but she'd figure it out. She always did. Their first official meeting was scheduled for Monday morning at Lawrence's office. Elena had never been to Jensen Events headquarters before, and she was unprepared for the scale of it. The building was a converted warehouse in the arts district, with soaring ceilings, exposed brick, and enough space to make her modest office look like a closet. Lawrence's assistant, a friendly woman named Patricia, led Elena through the open floor plan to a glass-walled office at the back. Lawrence was on a call when she arrived, but he waved her in and pointed to a chair. "Tell them I need final numbers by Wednesday," he was saying into his phone. "No, that's not negotiable. The client approved the budget already. We just need to execute." A pause. "Good, talk later." He hung up and gave Elena his full attention. "Thanks for coming here. I figured it would be easier to show you our resources rather than just telling you about them." "It's impressive," Elena admitted. "It took time." He stood. "Come on, I'll give you the tour." Lawrence walked her through the space, introducing her to his team of 12 full-time employees plus the rotating contractors. There was a design studio, a props warehouse, and a testing kitchen for catering trials. Elena tried not to let her envy show. "I know what you're thinking," Lawrence said as they returned to his office. "You're wondering how you're supposed to contribute when I have all of this and you're working out of a shared office space." She flushed. "Am I that obvious? I had the same feeling when I was starting out." Every meeting with an established competitor felt like a reminder of everything I didn't have yet. He pulled out a chair for her at his conference table. "But you have something I don't. You still have the scrappiness, the creativity that comes from having to make things work with limited resources." "My team is good, but they're used to having a budget. Sometimes that makes us lazy." "Somehow I doubt your team is ever lazy," Elena said. "Fair point." His smile was genuine. "But I'm serious about this partnership. I want your input on everything, not just your assigned hotels." They spent the next 3 hours going through logistics. Lawrence had already started preliminary planning, and Elena was impressed by how thorough he was. He'd researched every location, identified potential vendors, and created timelines for each phase of the project. "You did all this in 3 days?" she asked, flipping through the digital files he'd shared. "Couldn't sleep." She looked up. "Why not?" "I kept thinking about what Margaret said, that both our pitches had weaknesses." He leaned back in his chair. "She was right. My concept was too impersonal. Yours didn't have enough scale. I was trying to figure out how to bridge that gap." "And did you?" "I think so." Lawrence pulled up a new document on the screen. "What if we theme each hotel's event around its location? Your intimate approach, but with enough production value to make it feel significant. Then we coordinate timing so there's still that synchronized element I pitched, but each event stands alone as something special." Elena studied the screen, her mind already spinning with possibilities. "That could work. We need strong branding to tie them together visually." "Exactly. And for the flagship event, we combine everything. Intimate setting, a list talent, full production." "Which hotel for the flagship?" "Their property in Napa. It's their crown jewel, and the setting lends itself to luxury." They kept talking, ideas building on ideas, and Elena forgot to be intimidated. This was why she loved what she did. The creative process, the problem-solving, the way a good concept could evolve into something better through collaboration. When she finally checked her watch, it was past 6. "I'm sorry," Lawrence said. "I didn't mean to keep you so late." "Don't apologize. This was productive." Elena started gathering her things. "Same time next week. Actually, I was thinking we should meet more frequently, at least through the planning phase." He hesitated. "What if we met for breakfast a few times a week, somewhere neutral so you don't always have to come here?" It was reasonable. It was professional. So why did Elena's pulse quicken at the suggestion? Sure, she said. That works. They started meeting at a diner halfway between their offices every Tuesday and Thursday morning. Elena told herself it was just efficient scheduling, but she found herself looking forward to those breakfasts more than she should. Lawrence was different in the informal setting, more relaxed, quicker to laugh. He told her about starting his company, the early disasters and unlikely successes. She shared her own stories about difficult clients and events that had gone wrong in spectacular ways. There was this wedding, Elena said over pancakes one morning. The bride insisted on releasing butterflies during the ceremony, 50 white butterflies in these decorative boxes. I can already tell this ends badly, Lawrence said. The boxes were supposed to open on a timer, except someone set them wrong and they opened during the processional. Butterflies everywhere. The flower girl started crying, the groom was allergic, and 3 butterflies died, which made the bride cry. Elena laughed at the memory. The photographer got amazing shots, though. Did they pay you? Eventually. After I replaced the dead butterflies and got the groom a gift certificate for an allergy treatment. She took a sip of coffee. What's your worst disaster? Lawrence thought for a moment. Corporate retreat in Colorado, zip lining, team building exercises, the whole outdoor adventure experience. Except I didn't account for altitude affecting people from sea level. Half the executives got altitude sickness the first day. What did you do? Rented oxygen tanks and converted the whole retreat into a spa weekend. It actually turned out better than the original plan. He grinned. Though I never booked a mountain venue again without mandatory acclimatization time. These conversations made Lawrence more human to Elena. Less the intimidating CEO and more a person who'd worked incredibly hard and made plenty of mistakes along the way. By the 3rd week of planning, they'd fallen into an easy rhythm. Lawrence handled the technical production elements while Elena focused on the creative concepts and guest experiences. They disagreed sometimes, occasionally argued, but they always found a solution. Elena was working late in her office one Thursday when her phone rang. Lawrence's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," she answered. "What's up? Are you still at your office?" "Yeah, why? Stay there. I'm coming to you." He hung up before she could ask questions. 20 minutes later, Lawrence appeared at her door carrying a bag from her favorite Thai restaurant. "How did you know I like Thai food?" Elena asked as he unpacked containers on her desk. "You mentioned it 2 weeks ago. Also, you've been working non-stop and probably forgot to eat dinner." He handed her chopsticks. "I need to go over the vendor contracts with you, and I figured we could multitask." They ate and worked, and Elena tried not to notice how comfortable it felt having Lawrence in her small office. He didn't comment on the modest space or the mismatched furniture she'd bought secondhand. He just spread out contracts and asked for her opinion. "This catering company wants a 50% deposit," Lawrence said. "That's higher than I'd like, but they're the best in Phoenix. Can we negotiate it to 35% with the balance due a week before the event instead of the day after?" "That's good. I'll counter with that." He made a note. "You're good at contracts." "I had to be. When you're small, vendors try to take advantage." Elena set down her chopsticks. "Lawrence, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why are you really doing this? The partnership, I mean. You could have walked away when Margaret suggested it, pitched for the full contract on your own. Why agree to work with me?" Lawrence was quiet for a long moment. "Honestly, because you challenged me. Your pitch made me realize I'd gotten comfortable. I was relying on the same formulas that had worked before instead of pushing myself creatively." He met her eyes. "You reminded me why I started this company in the first place. Not for the money or the prestige, but because I love creating experiences that matter to people." Something in Elena's chest tightened. "That's a good reason. Plus, he added with a slight smile. "You're the only person who's ever told me my idea was too impersonal. I needed to hear that. Even though it could have cost you the contract, especially because of that. You weren't trying to impress me or compete. You were focused on what was right for the client." He started packing up the empty food containers. That's rare in this industry. After he left, Elena sat alone in her office, trying to untangle the feelings knotting in her chest. She respected Lawrence professionally, enjoyed his company. But somewhere in the late-night planning sessions and breakfast meetings, something had shifted. She was starting to look forward to seeing him not because of the project, but because of him. That was dangerous territory. Elena threw herself into work, trying to ignore the growing attraction. But it became harder during their meetings, especially when Lawrence would lean close to point at something on her screen, or when his hand would brush hers reaching for the same document. She wasn't the only one noticing. Her assistant, a part-time college student named Sophie, commented on it one afternoon. "So you and the hot CEO," Sophie said. "When are you two going to admit you're into each other?" "We're business partners," Elena said firmly. "That's all. Right. And that's why you check your phone every 5 minutes to see if he's texted." "I do not." Sophie just raised an eyebrow. Elena resolved to be less obvious. The resolution lasted until their next breakfast meeting. Lawrence arrived looking exhausted, his normally perfect appearance slightly disheveled. "Rough night?" Elena asked. "Didn't sleep. One of my events hit a major snag." He explained the situation, a corporate gala where the keynote speaker had canceled last minute and the client was threatening to walk. "Can you get a replacement speaker?" "Not with 2 days' notice, at least not the caliber they're expecting." Lawrence rubbed his face. "I might have to eat the cancellation fee. It's $50,000. Elena winced. Even for his company, that was a significant loss. "What about changing the format? Instead of one keynote, do a panel discussion with industry leaders." "Those are usually easier to book, and some clients actually prefer the variety." Lawrence looked up. "That could work. I have some contacts in the tech industry from my prestige days. Give me the details and I'll see who I can reach." "Elena, you don't have to do that. We're partners, remember? Your crisis is my crisis." She spent the afternoon making calls, and by evening she'd secured 3 panelists who were perfect for the event. Lawrence called her immediately after she texted him the news. "You're amazing," he said, and the warmth in his voice made her stomach flip. "Seriously, Elena, you just saved this entire event. Just returning the favor, you've helped me plenty. Let me take you to dinner. A real thank you, not just a working meal." Elena knew she should say no. But she heard herself saying, "Okay." They went to a small Italian restaurant Lawrence knew, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. It was the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles, intimate and warm. "I've been coming here since I started my company," Lawrence said as they settled into a corner booth. "The owner, Marco, let me eat on credit for months when I was broke. Does he know how successful you are now?" "Yeah, but he still treats me like the kid who could barely afford pasta." Lawrence smiled. "I like that. It keeps me grounded." They ordered wine and food and the conversation drifted away from work. Lawrence asked about her family, and Elena found herself sharing more than she'd intended. "My parents wanted me to be a doctor," she said. "They immigrated from Mexico before I was born, worked incredibly hard to give me opportunities. When I said I wanted to plan events, they thought I was throwing my life away. What changed their mind? They came to one of my events, a quinceañera I'd planned for a family friend's daughter. My mom cried during the father-daughter dance, and afterward she told me she finally understood what I did." Elena's throat tightened with the memory. "She said I created moments that become part of people's stories." That's beautiful, Lawrence said softly. What about your family? What do they think of your success? His expression shuddered slightly. My dad died when I was in college, heart attack. He never got to see the company. I'm sorry. My mom's proud, I think, but she worries I work too much. She's probably right. Lawrence took a sip of wine. She keeps asking when I'm going to settle down, give her grandchildren. She doesn't understand that I can't just turn off the drive that built the company. Maybe you don't have to turn it off. Maybe you just need to find someone who shares it. Their eyes met across the table, and the air between them felt charged. Elena realized how close they were sitting, how easily she could lean forward and close the distance. Instead, she pulled back and cleared her throat. We should probably talk about the Napa event. Something flickered in Lawrence's expression. Disappointment maybe, but he followed her lead. They spent the rest of dinner discussing business, but the tension remained simmering beneath every word. The next few weeks were torture. Elena couldn't stop thinking about Lawrence, and she was fairly certain he felt the same based on the way he looked at her sometimes. But neither of them crossed that line. The project was too important, the partnership too valuable to risk. They were 2 months into planning when Margaret requested an update meeting. Elena and Lawrence presented together, their coordination now seamless. They developed a rhythm where they could finish each other's sentences, anticipate each other's needs, Margaret noticed. You two work well together, she observed. We've found our groove, Lawrence said, and his eyes went to Elena. After the meeting, they walked out of the building together. It was late afternoon, the sun creating long shadows across the parking lot. Want to grab dinner? Lawrence asked. Celebrate the good meeting. Elena knew she should say no. These dinners were becoming too frequent, too important to her. But she couldn't resist. Sure. They ended up at a burger place, casual and loud, sitting in a booth near the back. Lawrence ordered a beer and actually relaxed, loosening his tie and rolling up his sleeves. Can I ask you something personal? Elena said. Of course. Why aren't you in a relationship? I mean, you're successful, smart, attractive. She felt herself blushing. I'm just surprised someone hasn't snatched you up. Lawrence smiled, but there was something sad in it. I've tried. It never works out. Most people can't handle the hours I work or the fact that my company will always be a priority. He paused. I've accepted that this might be my life. Just me and the business. That sounds lonely. It is sometimes. He looked at her directly. What about you? Why is someone as brilliant and beautiful as you still single? Elena's heart was pounding. Maybe I haven't met the right person yet. Or maybe you have and you're too scared to do anything about it. The words hung between them. Elena knew this was the moment, the point where everything could change. She could make a joke, deflect, keep things professional, or she could be honest. Maybe I'm scared because the person I'm interested in is my business partner, she said quietly. And if it doesn't work out, I lose both the relationship and the partnership. Lawrence reached across the table and took her hand. His palm was warm, his grip steady. I've been thinking about this for weeks, he said, trying to figure out if it's worth the risk, and I keep coming back to the same conclusion. What's that? That you're worth any risk. This, us, whatever it could be. I can't stop thinking about you, Elena. When we're not together, I'm finding excuses to text you. When we're working, I'm looking for reasons to sit closer. I'm 31 years old and I've never felt this way about anyone. Elena's breath caught. Lawrence, if you don't feel the same, just tell me. We'll keep things professional and I'll deal with it. But if there's any chance you feel even a fraction of what I'm feeling, then I need to know. She thought about all the reasons this was a bad idea. The partnership, the contract, the potential complications. But none of that mattered as much as the way her heart raced when she saw him, or the way his smile could brighten her entire day. I feel the same, she said. I've been feeling the same for weeks. The smile that broke across Lawrence's face was worth every risk. He stood, still holding her hand, and pulled her up with him. They were standing close now, close enough that Elena could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. "Please." Lawrence cupped her face gently, and then his lips were on hers. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, and then deeper as Elena pressed closer. She could feel his heartbeat against her chest, rapid and strong, matching her own. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lawrence rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that for so long," he murmured. "Me too." They sat back down, but this time on the same side of the booth, close enough that their shoulders touched. The conversation flowed easier now, without the weight of unspoken feelings between them. "What do we tell Margaret?" Elena asked. "The truth, that we're together but it won't affect the project." Lawrence took her hand again. "Because it won't. If anything, I think this makes us stronger as a team." Elena wasn't sure Margaret would see it that way, but she trusted Lawrence. More than that, she trusted what they were building together. They decided to keep the relationship quiet for a few weeks, just until they were more secure in what they had. It was harder than Elena expected. At work meetings, she had to resist the urge to touch him, to lean into his space the way she did when they were alone. But there was also something thrilling about the secret, the private smiles they shared when no one was looking. Lawrence took her on real dates now, not just working dinners. They went to museums and movies, took a weekend trip to the coast. Elena learned that Lawrence was surprisingly romantic beneath his CEO exterior. He remembered small details like her favorite flowers and the way she took her coffee. He sent her good morning texts and called just to hear her voice. For the first time in years, Elena felt balanced. Her business was thriving, the luminescence project was going perfectly, and she was falling in love with someone who understood her drive and ambition. 3 months into planning, they hit their first major obstacle. The venue for the Dallas event canceled unexpectedly, a structural issue that made the space unusable. They had 6 weeks until the scheduled event date, and no backup location. Elena and Lawrence spent an entire day calling every possible venue in Dallas. Everything was either booked, too small, or wildly out of budget. "This is a disaster," Elena said, pacing Lawrence's office at midnight. "If we can't deliver on this event, it reflects badly on both of us. We'll figure it out." Lawrence was at his computer searching for options. "There has to be something we're missing. What if we move it to a different city? The Dallas hotel is part of the coordinated launch. We need to stay in Dallas." He sat back, frustrated. "Unless we get creative with the location." "What do you mean? What if we don't use a traditional venue?" "The Dallas hotel has a rooftop, right? What if we use that?" Elena pulled up the hotel specs on her tablet. "It's not huge, but if we limit the guest list and do something more intimate." She looked up, excited now. This could actually be better than the original plan. They worked through the night, redesigning the Dallas event around a rooftop concept. By morning, they had a plan that was more elegant and unique than the original venue would have allowed. When they presented the revised concept to Margaret, she loved it. "This is exactly what I meant about you two being better together," she said. "Separately, you might have panicked. Together, you found a creative solution." After the meeting, Lawrence pulled Elena into an empty conference room and kissed her thoroughly. "We make a good team," he said against her lips. "The best team," Elena agreed. As the events approached, the pace became frantic. Elena was coordinating with vendors across 15 cities while Lawrence managed the technical production elements. They were both working 18-hour days, but they made time for each other. Quick dinners, late-night phone calls, stolen moments in between meetings. The first event was in Miami, and Elena was a nervous wreck. Everything they'd worked for came down to this. If it failed, the entire project could collapse. Lawrence found her backstage 30 minutes before doors opened, pacing and muttering to herself. "Hey," he said gently, catching her shoulders. "Breathe. What if something goes wrong? What if we forgot something? Then we handle it, together." He pulled her into a hug. "Elena, you're brilliant at this. The event is going to be perfect because you made it perfect." His confidence steadied her. When the doors opened and guests began arriving, Elena slipped into her element. She moved through the crowd, ensuring every detail was flawless. Every guest felt special. The event was a triumph. Media coverage was instant and glowing. Over the next month, they executed each event with the same success. Elena's intimate touches, combined with Lawrence's production expertise, created experiences that felt both grand and personal. The industry noticed. Elena's phone rang constantly with new opportunities, and Lawrence's company reached new heights of recognition. The final event, the flagship in Napa, was scheduled for mid-June. It was going to be the crown jewel of the entire campaign, and they'd poured everything into making it spectacular. 2 weeks before the Napa event, Margaret called them both into her office. "I wanted to tell you in person," she said, smiling. "The board is thrilled with everything you've delivered. The events have exceeded all expectations, and our booking numbers are up 40% across all properties." "That's wonderful," Elena said, relief flooding through her. "There's more. We want to discuss a longer-term partnership, quarterly events at our properties, coordinated by both your companies." Margaret looked between them. "We'd also like you to pitch for our international properties launch next year. Much bigger scope, much bigger budget." After they left Margaret's office, Lawrence grabbed Elena's hand and pulled her into the stairwell. "Did that just happen?" Elena asked, still stunned. "We did it. You did it." Lawrence lifted her off her feet, spinning her around. "Your company is set, Elena. This changes everything for you. For both of us." He set her down but kept his arms around her. "I'm so proud of you, Lawrence. I couldn't have done any of this without you." "Yes, you could have. You're talented enough to succeed on your own." He kissed her softly. "But I'm glad I got to be part of it." The Napa event was scheduled for a Saturday evening. Elena and Lawrence arrived on Thursday to oversee setup. The luminescent Napa property was stunning, nestled in vineyards with mountain views. They designed the event around the natural beauty, using the terraced gardens for an elegant cocktail reception followed by dinner in the barrel room. Friday was a blur of final preparations. Elena worked with the catering team while Lawrence handled lighting and sound. By Friday evening, everything was ready. They had dinner on the hotel terrace, finally allowing themselves to relax. "After tomorrow, the project is complete," Elena said, watching the sunset paint the sky pink and gold. "It's strange. I've been so focused on this for months, and now it's almost over. The project might be ending, but we're not." Lawrence reached across the table, taking her hand. "Elena, these past few months with you have been the best of my life, not just professionally, but personally. You've challenged me, inspired me, made me remember why I love what I do." Her throat tightened. "You've done the same for me. I want to keep doing this, not just the work, but us. I want to see where this goes." "I want that too." "Good," he smiled. "Because I'm falling in love with you, and it would be really inconvenient if you didn't feel the same." Elena laughed, tears pricking her eyes. "I'm falling in love with you too. Have been for a while." Lawrence stood and moved to her side of the table, kneeling beside her chair. "I know this is fast and maybe it's crazy, but I've never been more sure of anything. I want to build a life with you, Elena. I want to wake up next to you and work beside you and come home to you. I want everything." "Lawrence, I'm not proposing, not yet. I know we need more time." He cupped her face. "But I'm telling you my intentions. When I do propose, it's going to be with a ring and a plan for our future. So if that's not what you want, tell me now." Elena's heart felt too big for her chest. "That's exactly what I want." They kissed as the sun set over the vineyards, and Elena felt something click into place. This was what her life had been building toward. Not just professional success, but finding someone who understood her completely. The next evening, the Napa event exceeded even their highest expectations. Every detail was perfect, from the string quartet playing during cocktail hour to the locally sourced dinner in the barrel room. Guests mingled under strings of lights, the vineyard providing a romantic backdrop. Elena and Lawrence moved through the crowd together, and it felt natural now. They'd stopped hiding their relationship weeks ago, and the industry had responded with approval rather than judgment. Apparently, their partnership was seen as aspirational, proof that collaboration could lead to success. Near the end of the evening, Margaret found them on the terrace. "This is magical," she said. "You two have created something really special, not just tonight but the entire campaign." "Thank you for taking a chance on us," Elena said. "Thank you for proving the risk was worth it." Margaret smiled knowingly. "I had a feeling you two would either clash terribly or create something amazing together. I'm glad it was the latter." After the last guest left and the cleanup crew took over, Elena and Lawrence walked through the gardens. The night was warm and clear, stars visible despite the ambient light. "We did it," Elena said, leaning into Lawrence's side. "We did." He wrapped his arm around her. "Any regrets?" "Not a single one." "Good, because I have something to ask you." Elena's pulse quickened. "What?" "Move in with me." Lawrence turned to face her. "I know it's soon, but we practically live together already. You're at my place most nights anyway, and I hate the mornings when you're not there." She'd been thinking the same thing for weeks but had been afraid to bring it up. "I'd love to." Lawrence's smile was radiant. Yeah. But I get to keep my office. Garcia Events stays independent." "Absolutely. I wouldn't want it any other way." He pulled her close. "I love you, Elena Garcia. I love your drive, your creativity, your stubborn independence. I love the way you make me better." "I love you too, Lawrence Jensen. Even if you are an overachieving workaholic. Takes one to know one." They laughed, and then Lawrence was kissing her under the stars, and Elena thought about how much had changed in just a few months. She'd gone from competing against Lawrence to working with him to falling completely in love with him. And it all felt right. They spent the night at the Napa Hotel, and in the morning they packed up to return to the city. The drive was comfortable, filled with easy conversation and plans for the future. They talked about the international project Margaret had mentioned, about growing their companies, about finding a place to live together. "Big enough for a home office for both of us," Elena said. "And a yard." "I've always wanted a yard." "For what?" "I don't know. Space. Maybe a garden. Definitely a dog." Lawrence grinned. "You want a dog?" "I've always wanted a dog. I just haven't had time or space." She looked at him. "Is that okay, Elena? You can have anything you want. Dogs, gardens, whatever makes you happy." They found a house 3 weeks later, a craftsman in a quiet neighborhood with a big backyard and enough space for both their home offices. Moving in together was chaotic but fun. Elena brought her mismatched furniture and collection of event planning books. Lawrence brought his sleek modern pieces and impressive wine collection. They compromised on decorating, blending their styles into something uniquely theirs. The first morning waking up in their house, Elena found Lawrence in the kitchen making coffee. He was wearing worn jeans and an old t-shirt, hair messy from sleep, and she'd never seen anything more attractive. "Morning," he said, handing her a mug. "Good morning." She wrapped her arms around his waist. "I could get used to this." "You better." I'm planning on keeping you around for a long time. They adopted a golden retriever puppy they named Charlie, who promptly destroyed 3 pairs of Lawrence's expensive shoes and won both their hearts completely. Their life fell into a rhythm that balanced work and home, independence and partnership. Garcia events continued to grow, with Elena hiring 2 full-time employees and moving into a larger office space. Lawrence's company took on even bigger projects, including a major international expansion. They still collaborated when it made sense, but they'd established clear boundaries that kept their businesses separate. The industry watched their relationship with interest. They were interviewed together for trade publications, held up as an example of how competition could become collaboration. Elena found it amusing how people romanticized their story, but there was truth to it. They had been better together than apart. A year after the luminescence project completed, Lawrence took Elena back to Napa for the weekend. They stayed at the same hotel, walked through the same gardens where they'd celebrated their success. On Saturday evening, Lawrence suggested a walk after dinner. Elena didn't think anything of it until he led her to the exact spot on the terrace where they'd confessed their feelings the year before. "You remember standing here?" Lawrence asked. "Of course. This is where you told me you were falling in love with me. I also told you that I wanted to build a life with you, that when I proposed, it would be with a ring and a plan." He reached into his pocket and Elena's breath caught. "I have both now." He opened a small velvet box, revealing a stunning diamond ring. "Elena Garcia, you've made me happier than I ever thought possible. You challenge me every day to be better, work harder, dream bigger. But you also remind me that there's more to life than just the business. You've given me balance, love, a home that feels complete." He took a breath. "I want to spend the rest of my life making you as happy as you make me. Will you marry me?" Tears were streaming down Elena's face. "Yes, absolutely yes." Lawrence slipped the ring on her finger and then pulled her into a kiss. When they broke apart, Elena laughed through her tears. "What's the plan you mentioned? The plan? You said you'd propose with a ring and a plan." Lawrence smiled. "Right, so I was thinking if you're open to it, we could start merging some of our business operations. Not completely, but enough that we can take on bigger projects together without the coordination headaches. We keep our individual brand identities, but operate under a parent company we build together. You've really thought about this. I have spreadsheets, and market analysis, and a 5-year projection." He looked almost sheepish. "I can't help it, it's who I am. I know, it's one of the things I love about you." Elena studied her ring, the way it caught the light. "I love the idea of building something together, really together, not just collaborating on projects." Yeah, but we need rules, clear boundaries between work and home, and we hire a mediator for when we disagree on big business decisions." "Deal." Lawrence kissed her again. "Have I mentioned that I love you once or twice, but I never get tired of hearing it." They were married 6 months later in a ceremony they planned together, naturally. It was held at a botanical garden, intimate and elegant, with close friends and family. Elena's parents cried through the entire ceremony, and Lawrence's mother told Elena she'd been praying for someone exactly like her to come into her son's life. The reception was perfect, a reflection of everything they'd learned about creating meaningful experiences. But what Elena remembered most was slow dancing with Lawrence under string lights, his arms around her, knowing that this was just the beginning. 2 years after their wedding, Elena and Lawrence launched their merged company, Jensen Garcia Events. It combined the best of both their approaches, the scale and resources of Lawrence's original company with the creativity and personal attention that made Elena's work special. They hired carefully, building a team that shared their vision. The business exploded. Within a year, they were planning events internationally, working with clients who wanted the magic that only Jensen Garcia could provide. They won industry awards, were featured in major publications, became the go-to name for high-end event planning. But success didn't change what mattered most. They still had breakfast together most mornings, still made time for date nights and weekend getaways. They'd learned how to fight fair when they disagreed and how to celebrate each other's wins. They built not just a business empire but a partnership that made both of them better. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Lawrence surprised Elena with a trip back to Napa. They stayed at the Luminescence property again, and on their last evening they walked through the gardens one more time. "You ever think about that first pitch meeting?" Elena asked, leaning against the terrace railing. "How much we disliked each other." "I never disliked you," Lawrence said. "I was intimidated by you. There's a difference. You were intimidated by me, absolutely. You were talented and determined and beautiful, and I knew you were going to be serious competition." He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "I just didn't know you'd end up being the best partner I could imagine." Elena turned in his arms. "I have something to tell you." "What?" "I'm pregnant." Lawrence's eyes went wide. "You're serious?" "Found out this morning. I wanted to tell you here where everything started for us." Elena's voice caught with emotion. "We're going to have a baby." Lawrence lifted her off her feet, spinning her around before setting her down gently. "We're having a baby," he repeated like he couldn't quite believe it. "Are you happy?" "Happy doesn't even begin to cover it." He cupped her face, kissing her softly. "You've given me everything, Elena. A career I love, a home, a life that matters, and now a family." "We built it together," she corrected. "We did. And we're going to keep building it together." Their daughter, Sophia, was born the following spring. She had Lawrence's brown eyes and Elena's determination, making her presence known from day one. They hired help so they could both continue working, but they were intentional about balance. Family dinners, bedtime routines, weekend adventures to the park with Charlie, who appointed himself Sophia's guardian. Elena watched Lawrence with their daughter and fell even more in love with him. He was patient and gentle, reading the same story 5 times in a row without complaint, singing off-key lullabies, wearing spit-up on his expensive suits without caring. He was an amazing father, just as she'd known he would be. When Sophia was 2, they had a son, Marcus. Their house became louder, messier, more chaotic, and neither of them would change a thing. They hired more staff for Jensen Garcia events, delegating more so they could be present for their children. The business continued to thrive, but it was no longer the center of their world. It was part of a larger, richer life they'd built together. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Elena and Lawrence left the kids with Lawrence's mother and returned to Napa once again. It had become their tradition, this annual pilgrimage to where their story truly began. They were sitting on the same terrace, older now, more tired from parenting 2 energetic kids but happier than ever. "Thank you," Elena said suddenly. Lawrence looked over. "For what?" "For taking a chance on me, on us. For seeing the potential in working together instead of against each other." "Elena, I should be thanking you. You gave me everything I didn't know I was missing." He took her hand. "You know what I remember most about that first pitch meeting?" "What?" "Thinking that you were going to be trouble, and I was right." He grinned. "The best kind of trouble," Elena laughed. "We made a good team." "We make a good team," Lawrence corrected. Present tense, still true. They kissed as the sun set over the vineyards, the same view they'd seen so many times before, but it never got old, just like their love never dimmed. If anything, it grew stronger with each passing year, deepened by shared experiences and challenges overcome together. Elena thought about how scared she'd been that day in the conference room, worried about competition and protecting her small business. She'd seen Lawrence as a threat to everything she was building, but he'd become her greatest ally, her partner in every sense of the word. They'd competed for the same client and discovered they made a better team. They'd built a business empire together. But more importantly, they'd built a life filled with love, family, and the kind of partnership that made everything else possible. Looking at Lawrence, Elena knew she'd make the same choices all over again. Every risk, every compromise, every moment of vulnerability that had led them here. Because this, right here, was everything she'd ever wanted and so much more than she'd ever dreamed possible. Their story had started with competition and ended with collaboration. It had grown from professional respect into personal love. And it would continue year after year as they kept building their life together, one beautiful moment at a time. The future stretched ahead of them, full of possibility. More events to plan, more memories to make, more adventures with their children. But whatever came next, Elena knew they'd face it together. They always had and they always would. Because they weren't just partners in business anymore, they were partners in everything. And that made all the difference.